Joining me now, Ashley Akers, former federal prosecutor who worked on the January 6th cases. Ashley is now being singled out for investigation by the acting U.S. attorney in D.C. for speaking out after her resignation. Ashley, thank you for being here. I know the circumstances under which certainly have to cause you duress. But before we get to the new DOJ potentially coming after you, NBC reports acting FBI Director Brian Driscoll pushed back so forcefully that some officials feared he would be dismissed. Give me a sense of what you're hearing from former friends and colleagues about the showdowns that are taking place right now and the fact that it is all about the January 6th rioters. Is that confirmed? Is that what this is about?
Thank you. The reports from the inside do suggest that there's been a concerted attempt to go after the agents and other law enforcement officials and prosecutors who worked in any way on the January 6th prosecutions. And so Mr. Driscoll's pushback here, in my assessment, is very admirable. It's courageous. These law enforcement officials and attorneys should have the process that the law provides them. And what's being seen right now from the Trump administration is sort of a subversion of that due process.
So the White House press secretary was asked about the firings of 24 federal prosecutors. Let's listen together to her response.
So it is the belief of this White House and the White House counsel's office that the president was within his executive authority to do that. He is the executive of the executive branch, and therefore he has the power to fire anyone within the executive branch that he wishes to.
Did he personally direct this, given they worked on the classified documents investigation and the election interference investigation?
This was a memo that went out by the Presidential Personnel Office, and the president is the leader of this White House. So yes.
Are these firings legal?
I think that's to be seen. There certainly was a lack of process. This happened last week in an email attachment that was sent to career employees. And what the email focused on was not any just cause for what these attorneys did. It just cited their perpetuation of what the president called the national injustice of the prosecution of the January 6th riot. And what I think is important for the American people to keep in mind is these are prosecutors who were duty bound to support and defend the Constitution, who prosecuted and proudly people who violently assaulted law enforcement, who destroyed government property, and who hunted our elected legislative branch inside the United States Capitol on January 6th. These people did nothing wrong, and this is a clear act of political retribution.
And I'm going to presume that you will include yourself in that group because Bloomberg is reporting on an email that was sent to staff by Trump's appointee as acting U.S. attorney in D.C., in which it quotes him using your name. He added that he will be reaching out to her and will see if we can help her, referring to you. He also said that he wanted to ensure the office had her records and emails, again, yours. Has he reached out to you? Has anyone from DOJ?
He has not reached out to me. It's unsurprising that he hasn't. I think that was an email that was written maybe in a time of fury because there are people speaking out against what I've called a frivolous project aimed at the attempt of making the January 6th prosecutors look bad. He can read all my emails. He can read all of our documents. I would note that the prosecution against the Capitol rioters started under the Trump administration. On January 7th, 2021, we started this investigation and have been prosecuting these individuals under rubrics and guidance that were issued under that administration. So for the acting U.S. attorney in D.C. to now come after career DOJ employees, it's a bit shameful in my assessment.
Ashley, can you give us a sense of some of these people who've been pardoned? Anyone that you may have worked on yourself, a case, prosecuting one of them, or any of your close colleagues, things that you've learned that raise big flags for you by them now being out of jail and pardoned by President Trump?
These are people who, in many cases, felt compelled to make it into the Capitol building and to stop the peaceful transition of power. And what stands out to me is that these people on that date stopped at nothing. They didn't care if there were armed police officers in front of them. They didn't care if there were barricades. They didn't care if the doors were locked. They did everything in their power to break through police lines, to break through barricades, through windows. They assaulted these officers with all sorts of weapons, and they were doing that because they wanted to stop the peaceful transition of power. How dangerous it is that the President of the United States issued a blanket pardon against these individuals who would do anything they could to stop the democratic process. And I've said before, and I'll say it again, the president's blanket pardon of these violent individuals is an endorsement of their conduct. He is not only supporting and endorsing and condoning them, but in his rhetoric, he's celebrating them. And I think the American people should be concerned that these thousands of people who stopped at nothing to stop the democratic process are now being supported and celebrated by the President of the United States.
I want to ask you about the concept of mob mentality. When it came to your research and your investigations into the prosecutions, to what extent, if you can break it down, were people coming to the Capitol with the intention of doing harm and had prepared for doing harm, whether violently or otherwise, versus those that had gone to the rally, got caught up in it, made the walk to the Capitol, and then behaved in such a manner? And I ask this because we have heard some people, a few, that have been pardoned who say, we really regret what we did. We've come out of this mob mentality coma that we were in that day. How do you see it break down?
It would be difficult to say a percentage, for example, but in my experience, there were certainly people who were caught up in a mob mentality. And that mob mentality started at the Stop the Steal rally, where the president spoke and amplified the crowd and encouraged them to go to the Capitol. So there were certainly people who I believe came to the Capitol of the United States to watch the former and now president speak, and who got caught up in the action. But there were also many, many people who planned for this ahead of time. The footage that you were showing earlier that has been shown in all of our trials shows that people were prepared. They came prepared for violence. They had helmets on, bulletproof vests, backpacks, gas masks, goggles, all sorts of indicia that they were ready and coming to fight. And so those people certainly anticipated more than a peaceful rally. And I'll tell you also that some of our best evidence during the course of these trials were the defendants' own statements. Defendants saying things like, I am prepared for war. I'm prepared not to come home. As you see on the screen right there, the man in the American flag sweatshirt, that's a defendant who I prosecuted who very publicly spoke prior to January 6, 2021, that he was ready to give his life and that he was ready for a civil war. And so those people, of which there were many, anticipated and expected more. And I think the aftermath of what happened and what they saw, it was easy for them to blame mob mentality, but these people came prepared to fight, and they did.
Last question. To what extent are you worried about retribution against yourself?
I think the more important thing and the more important way to frame this is the American people should be fearful of a president who is amplifying this type of conduct. And so I suppose it's to be seen what other retribution this administration takes against prosecutors and agents. There are certainly more important things that the Department of Justice should be focused on than retribution for people abiding by their duty to support and defend the Constitution.
Ashley Akers, you have my admiration, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of a lot of our viewers as well, who are looking at you with a lot of admiration for this conversation. Thank you so much.